So the sympathies by this time of the people were certainly with Alexander. Alexander refused, as some of his friends advised, to come to terms with his claimants to the crown. He acted with promptness, and all who were incriminated in the assassination of Philip, his father, were dealt with severely. So that in and of itself put down a lot of potential uprisings. The news of Philip's death had caused, grief, consternation throughout the country. Greece claimed independence with the League of Corinth, and Demosthenes delivered orations inciting Athens and other Greek cities to break their agreement with the League of Corinth. He claimed that the treaty bound no city to any leader except Philip, and he further asked who could believe in the ability of the new king of Macedonia, untried, unknown, and only a boy of 20 years old. Alexander realized that he was in peril from different sides, from Greece itself, and even from Asia. But he considered that his most important task was to consolidate his position as the head of the League of Corinth. And he did this quickly, and he did it smoothly, and he did it very intelligently. And this became known as the ladder of Alexander. He turned the danger actually into a positive, and he was able to get this done without going to war, without striking one blow. The Thessalonian, and it was called Thessalonia for some reason, the Thessalonian cavalry became his possession. To an assembly of the Thessalonian nobility, he explained that he desired to be recognized as head of the League of Corinth in the place of his father. And in return, he promised them that he would protect their country, he would carry out the invasion of Persia that was contemplated by his father Philip, and that he would share with them the booty which would come from the war with Persia. So they believed him, and it happened. Alexander's audience assured him that he could rely on their loyalty and assistance at furthering bringing together this unification of Greece. And the outcome was that all of the adjoining states agreed to acknowledge the position of Alexander as the head. They didn't do away with the name, the League of Corinth, but basically that league extended well beyond Corinth. At Thermopylae, Alexander was basically unopposed. Alexander was appointed head of Greece in the place of Philip, his father. No problem came from Thebes or Athens. Demosthenes continued to wage some resistance, but no fortifications were prepared against a possible attack. Sparta, interestingly enough, refused to join the league. At Corinth, Alexander was met not only by politicians, but also by other thinkers who desired to converse with a king who had been a pupil of Aristotle. That helped. And Alexander then marched to the Danube to meet some resistance, but no invasion could be made of Persia until the tribes on the frontiers of Macedonia were repulsed. The enemy awaited Alexander at the Balkan Mountains, at the range of the Balkan Mountains. By a skillful dispersion of his soldiers to both the east and the west, Alexander's army was able to capture the rolling wagons and carts, and it wasn't long until the victory was Alexander's. And then he, at the Danube, marched to the Danube, where on the opposite bank, the fortified tribe awaited him with a strong force, and his fleet was able to rapidly take them. He turned south, and he invaded Macedonia, and this was an important western fortress, and he moved troops throughout a 200-mile distance without attack, and he captured anyone that was in his way there. And so he only had a northern campaign. And during this campaign, rumors spread that Alexander had been killed, but that was not true. And other Greek city-states promised to aid Alexander against any kind of Macedonian supremacy. And Alexander realized the importance of that news, because that was the last, basically the last straw for any part of the world standing. So, and this was near Athens, and so when this was done, it was at Athens. I mean, everything just prepared the way now for Alexander to be the ruler of the known world. So that's world history. That is how that happened. Alexander, go ahead.
That the Greeks, when they went into places, they tried to impose their gods, but the Romans let people keep whatever they were worshiping. Was that a distinction?
For the most part, yes, yes. Again, both the Grecians and the Romans, yes, the Grecians were more insistent upon their gods, but still, they would prefer not to have an uprising, you know, a lot like the Romans. But this was how the world was looking at the time that the Jewish people were, you know, coming away from the Old Testament period into the period in between the Testaments.
I guess what I'm thinking of, you know, they keep saying in Canaan they had Baal and gods like that. And did the Greeks get rid of all that and put their people in Palestine, their gods in there, instead of the ones that we heard of in the Old Testament?
Do you mean the gods of the Persians?
Yeah, or just whoever, like what I guess the Ammonites had some gods, and the gods, that they had all these false gods that they all worshiped too, that we keep reading about in the Old Testament. And then it's like, but the Israelites, whenever they would come and go, they would go back and forth between those gods and being with the Lord, you know, back and forth.
Most of the gods we read about in the Old Testament weren't the Persian gods. They were more Baal.
Yeah.
A lot of those gods were Babylonian gods. Not even a whole lot of discussion about Assyrian gods. The bulk of those would have been Babylonian deities.
Mm-hmm.
And but then Athens and the many gods that they had, they became, at least in history, more known than any other of the world powers, I would think. But upon Alexander's domination in the world now, he showed clemency to all people. That endeared him to many people. Athens was afraid of what might happen to her, but they knew that Alexander loved Athens because, again, Alexander studied out under Aristotle, and Socrates and Plato. They all loved Athens, and so that was distilled in Alexander. And he made no demands except that that anyone that would, begin or start an uprising against Athens would be completely squashed. So Alexander, at the age of 20, had within 2 years made himself master of Greece and of the world. The road seemed clear now for prosperity for a long time. Alexander and his government marked the beginning of a new era, of course, in the world. It's a broad division of history. It's been studied by ancient scholars. And there was a calculated effect on God's people. And that's why the Apocrypha, along with Daniel chapters 11 and 12, show the effect of the Grecian people on God's people. And in Daniel chapters 11 and 12, he is prophesying about this time period. And we will get into chapters 11 and 12 soon. They comprise the last recorded communication that was made by God to Daniel. The revelation that was made by God to Daniel in these last 2 chapters not only embrace a large portion of history as it relates to the Jewish people in ancient times, but it was also designed to give instruction as to the important events that should pertain to their nation in its progress, and alludes to important periods in the future as marking divided eras in the world's history. And it also contains hints as to what would occur, even down to something, perhaps even till the end of time. And if there is any mention at all about the second coming of Christ, it might be in Daniel chapters 11 and 12, if indeed it is referring that far down the line. From the reading of these 2 chapters, we need to observe that the vision took place in the 3rd year of Cyrus. That's Daniel chapter 10 and verse 1. Darius of Daniel 11:1 is the same Darius of Daniel 5:35. It's not Darius Hystaspes, but it's another Darius. The vision was received in the 3rd year of Cyrus. It moves back to Darius in the very beginning of the Persian period in Babylon. So it was in that year that Daniel offered the prayer recorded in Daniel chapter 9. It was in that year that, according to the time predicted by Jeremiah, that the captivity, the 70 years in Babylonian captivity, would terminate. It was in that year that an influence from, no doubt, from the mind of God, providentially, that led the mind of the Persian king's restoration to Jerusalem of God's people that were captured by Babylon. So 3 kings in Persia would stand up, or that there would be 3 kings in Persia before the 4th one that Daniel mentions. The 3 kings that are referred to here, I believe, was Camses, Smerdis, and Darius Hystaspes. The 4th king, guess who it was? Xerxes.
Of Xerxes.
It would have been Xerxes. Or the Bible calls him Ahasuerus. Ahasuerus and Xerxes are the same king. Xerxes was far richer than the other 3. Cyrus had collected a vast amount of wealth by his conquests and the subjugation of the rich kings in those nations. And Camses increased the wealth that he inherited from Cyrus. And if you look in, Halley's Bible Handbook, or wherever, I've got the list. You know what's really, if you're going to do a detailed study of this, it's neat to have all of the Assyrian kings that ruled when Assyria ruled the world, and all of the Babylonian kings, and you know who Nabopolassar is, and Evil Merodach, and Nebuchadnezzar, and you get a time for when they ruled, and then you have the Medo-Persian kings, or the Persian kings and the Median kings. You know, Darius was a Median king. Cyrus was a Persian king. And sometimes those get mixed up. And if you have their lists, Darius was the one that loved Daniel and had to put him in the lion's den because he was fooled into making that law. But Cyrus was the one that allowed the people to go back. But they were basically, we call, a lot of times we don't say Persia. Maybe we ought to refer to it as Persia instead of Medo-Persia, because, Media had a part in it, but they weren't like as strong as Persia. But Cyrus was a Persian king, and Camses and Darius Hystaspes, they were all Persian kings. So after Cyrus and Camses, then you had Darius Hystaspes, and those were the 3 kings that Daniel was prophesying about in chapter 11. And then that 4th king was Xerxes, Ahasuerus, and that was the king that loved Esther. That was Xerxes. So understanding all of that, is, particularly as we go into this intertestamental period, is pretty important. All right, Xerxes, by his strength and by his riches, he would stir up all of the realm of Greece. And there were several kings of Persia after Xerxes, but these are not enumerated because the real ground of the invasion of Persia by Alexander the Great did not occur in their reign, but it was in the invasion of Greece by Xerxes. And now we know after Xerxes came Artaxerxes, and he was the Persian king that Nehemiah served as his cupbearer. And Nehemiah is at the end of the Old Testament period, 400 years. He returned in 444. So it was before 444 that he was the cupbearer to Artaxerxes, and he's after Xerxes in the list. And Esther was the queen of Xerxes. So we see that Esther and Nehemiah were basically contemporary. All right, we got about 2 minutes. The mighty king, then, who would stand up there in verses 3 and 4 of
11.
of Daniel chapter 11. Yes. Was Alexander the Great. So if you have a wide margin Bible, or if you take notes in your Bible at all, it would be very helpful to put Alexander the Great in right there.
What was that? What was that citation? Daniel 11.
Yes. Verse number 3 and 4. You see Daniel 11, 3 and 4 there, the mighty king that would stand up?
Okay.
If you have your Bible there, it's that would be Alexander the Great. He ruled, the Bible says there, with great dominion. Do you have that? Do you have that open?
Yeah.
You have that? Go ahead and read verses 3 and 4 there.
And the mighty king shall stand up that shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken, as we thought, and shall be divided toward the four winds of heaven.
How about that?
Right, and not to his posterity, which means he
His
was
family.
married. And the two sons are Hercules and Alexander II.
Yeah.
Not according to his dominion which he ruled, for his kingdom shall be put up even for others beside those.
And of his family.
And then it goes to Paul.
Yeah, well, that was one of the four generals.
Yes.
So, I mean, you can put this whole history there. His family didn't get it. It went to his four generals, and that's exactly what happened in history.
That's exactly what this is.
All right. We'll put a peg in it right there.
You know, it talks about the king of Egypt, his daughter coming and making arrangement with Alexander. Yeah, I mean, it's history.
That's crazy.
It's history, yeah.
Yeah. You know, it would be neat to just go down the 11th and 12th chapters of Daniel and just write in what all those things are. You know, there needs to be a class taught. There needs to be a class taught. You know how Foy Wallace wrote a book entitled God's Prophetic Word?
Yeah.
Have a God's Prophetic Word and just go through prophecy and write in. You know how to teach the book and learn the book of Revelation? Is to get that book, get all of the symbols and what the definition of those symbols are, write the symbols in. Revelation is not a difficult book to understand once you get the figures down. Do that in Daniel and in these prophetic books that the Bible doesn't specifically say, hey, this great king is Alexander the Great. And just write those in your mark. Can you imagine how prophecy would come alive if when you read that, you didn't have to think, well, who is this? What is this doing?
Exactly like what we're reading there. I mean, if you can lay history down beside that, it makes it even more clear.
Yeah.
And the book of Revelation, is basically, we look at it as something way in the future, but it's basically history, except for the last chapter.
Yeah.
And if you take the historical events that occurred and lay them down by those prophetic utterances, it just opens it up.
Yep.
There was a Baptist that wrote
All right. Any other comments or questions, Carrie?
No, that's it. Would you like a key? Would you like a key to the GSOP library? Because they have the canteen in there.
A few years ago.
No, I think the canteen is in the other room. It's in the room where the director's desk is.
Yeah, we call both of those rooms the library.
No, the library's next to that room.
No, both of them are part of the library. That room where the desk is has all those books that were donated by John Tracy.
Yes.
And
are they to eventually go into where the stacks are then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to put some more bookshelves in that room where the director's desk is.
Okay.
And merge all that together into one GSOP library.
Oh, is it going to tear down that wall there? Or?
No, we're going to make an opening in the wall.
Oh, okay.
Back where the desk is, there's going to be an opening and have to move the desk somewhere else in the room.
Oh, that'd be neat.
And then you can just go between them.
Okay.
But they're going to get all the books on the computer where you can search on the computer. The first library that was in the other room Almost all those books now are online at the, if you go to the website for Piedmont Road, there's a link to the library. And in that library, you can do word searches and find what books are there. So the librarian there has added about 3,000 books that are in the GSOP library to the Piedmont Road library system for searching the books. So anything that you're interested in, you can just go to the Piedmont Road library site. If you go to Piedmont Road, there's something that says more over there is the main headings. You know, it's like these are your selections. You go to more, and then in more there's links. And if you go to link, there's a link to the library. And when you go to the library, you can search between the testaments, and you'll see all the books that are in there having to do with between the testaments. But if they're in the GSOP library, the little description will add GSOP next to it. So you can search either Piedmont Road's library upstairs or the GSOP library downstairs.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, you know.
Well, right now they're very much separated.
Yeah.
Because I keep locking that one door.
Yeah, but the door, that's got the canteen, and the same key opens both doors.
Okay.
And we could get a key, if we could get a key for you from Kelly, the secretary, so if you wanted to go in the canteen and get something to drink or something to eat there, you know, they have chips and candy bars, I think, and stuff like that.
That always stays open.
Yeah, that normally stays open. You can open it if Tommy is not going to be there for some reason.
Right.
And still use it. You just have to lock it up when you're done, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
well, I'll try to get access to that other room, and I'll look for Between the Testaments by Jenkins. And see.
Yeah, I'll look at it tonight, and I'll see if I can find it in there. There might be, actually, there might be 2 copies. There might be one in the GSOP, and there might be one upstairs.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Could be more than one.
That'd be good. That'd be good. Yeah. All right, brother.
All right. Thank you very much.
We'll see you next Tuesday.
Yes. Okay. Thanks.
All right. Take care.